Very good morning, students. This is 6th Standard Social, Term 3, History Lesson 1, Society and Culture in Ancient Tamilakam, the Sangam Age, Part 2 video. In this video, we are going to learn about the administrative system of the Sangam period and also the socio-economic condition of Tamilakam and also the Kalabara period. Let's see one by one. In the administrative system, the first heading is the court. The king's court was called Arasavai. The king occupied a ceremonious throne in the court called Ariyanai. In the court, the king was surrounded by officials, distinguished visitors, and court poets. The rulers had fivefold duties. They were encouraging learning, performing rituals, presenting gifts, protecting people, and punishing the criminals. Ambassadors were employed by the kings. They played a significant role. The king was assisted by a number of officials. They were divided into Aimperunkulu, 5 members committee, and Enberayam, that is 8 members group. Next, the army. The king's army consisted of 4 divisions, namely infantry, cavalry, elephants, and chariot force. The army was known as Padai. The chief of the army was known as Thanai Talaivan. The prominent weapons used during this period were sword, kedayam, that is shield, tomaram, lance, spears, bows and arrows. Tomaram is mentioned as a missile to be thrown at the enemy from the distance. The place where the weapons were kept was known as Padaikottil. The fort were protected by deep moats and trenches. The war drum was worshipped as a deity. Law and justice. The king was the final authority for appeal. In the capital town, the court of justice was called Avai. In the villages, Mandram served as the place for dispensing justice. In civil cases, the method of trial followed was to call upon the plaintiff to thrust his hand into a pot containing a cobra. If the cobra bit him, he was sentenced. If the cobra did not bite him, he was considered innocent and acquitted. Punishment was always severe. Execution was ordered for theft cases. The punishment awarded for other crimes included beheading, mutilation of the offending limbs of the body, torture and imprisonment and imposition of fines. Next, local administration. The entire kingdom was called Mandalam. Mandalam was divided into Nadus. Khurram was subdivision of Nadu. The Ur was a village classified into Perur, big village, Sirur, a small village, and Mudur, an old village, depending upon its population, size, and antiquity. Pattinam was the name for a coastal town and Puhar was the general term for harbour town. Next, important towns. Puhar, Urayur, Kurkai, Madurai, Muziri, Vanchi or Karur and Kanchi. Thinai-based Sangam society. The land was divided into 5 Thinais, that is Kurinji, Mullai, Marudam, Neidal and Palai. Land was classified according to its fertility. Marudam was called Menpulam, that is fertile land, and it is produced paddy and sugarcane. The rest of the landscape excluding Neidal was called Vanpulam, that is hard land, and it is produced pulses and dry grains. In Kurinji, the landscape Palmyra flower, occupation of the people, hunting and gathering, the people who are called as Kuravar, Kurathiyar, and they worship the god Murugan. Mullai peoples the landscape forest region, and the occupation of the Mullai peoples herding. Peoples who are lived in these places are called as Ayar, Aichir, and the deity of the god Mayun. Marudam, the landscape is riverline track, that is plains. Occupation of the people is agriculture, and the people who lived in these places are called Ulavan, Ulathiyar, and the deity of god is Indiran. Neither the landscape is coastal region. Occupation of the people is fishing and salt making. People who are called as Paradavar, Nulathiyar, and deity of the god is Varunan. Pali people landscape is parched land. Occupation of the people is heroic deeds. People who lived in the places are called Maravar, Marathiyar, and the deity of the god is Kottravai. Status of women. There was no restriction for women in social life. There were learned and wise women. 40 men poets had lived and left behind their valuable works. Marriage was a matter of self-choice. However, chastity, in Tamil we call it as karpu, was considered the highest virtue of women. Sons and daughters had equal shares in their parents' property. Women poets of Sangam age: Avayar, Velli Vidiyar, Kake Padiniyar, Adi Mandiyar, and then Punmudiyar. Next, religious beliefs and social divisions. The primary deity of the Tamils was Seyyon or Murugan. Other gods worshipped during the Sangam period were Sivan, Mayon, that is Vishnu, Indiran, Varunan, and Kottravai. The hero stone, that is Nadukal, worship was in the practice. Buddhism and Jainism also coexisted. Veerakal or Nadukal. The ancient Tamils had a great respect for the heroes who died in the battlefield. The hero stones were erected to commemorate heroes who sacrificed their lives in war. Caste did not develop in Tamilagam as it did in the northern India. Varna system, that is occupation based caste, came to the Dravidian south comparatively late. Next, dress and ornaments. The rich people wore muslin, silk, and fine cotton garments. Common people wore 2 pieces of cloths made of cotton. The Sangam literature refers to cloths which were thinner than the skin of a snake, Kalingam. Women adorned their hair plaits with flowers. Both men and women wore a variety of ornaments. They were made of gold, silver, pearls, precious stones, conch shells, and beads. The people were fond of using aromatic perfumes. Arts. There are many references to variety of musical instruments such as drum, flute, and yal. Karikalan was master of 7 notes of music. Elisai Vallavan. Singing bards were called Panar and Viraliyar. Dancing was performed by Kanigayar. Kooth, that is folk drama, was the most important cultural practice of the people of Sangam age. They developed the concept of Muttamil, that is Iyal Isai Nadagam. Next, occupation. The major occupations of the people were agriculture, cattle rearing, fishing, and hunting. Other craftsmen like carpenter, blacksmith, goldsmith, and potters were also part of the population. Weaving was the most common part-time occupation of the farmers and a regular full-time job for many others. Next, festivals and entertainments. People celebrated several festivals. The harvest festival, that is Pongal, and the festival of spring, Kartigai, were some of them. Indravila was celebrated in the capital. There were many amusements and games. This included dances, festivals, bullfights, cockfights, dice, hunting, wrestling, and playing in swings. Children played with toy cart and with the sand houses made by them. Trade. Trade existed at 3 levels: local, overland, and overseas. The extensive and lucrative foreign trade that Tamilagam enjoyed during this period stands testimony to the fact that Tamils had been great seafarers. Warehouses for storing the goods were built along the coast. The chief port had lighthouses which were called Kalangarai Ilangu Sudar. Caravans of merchants carried their merchandise to different places in oxen-driven carts. Barter system was prevalent. Malabar black pepper. When the mummy of Ramses II of the Egypt was uncovered, archaeologists found black peppercorns stuffed into his nostrils and in his abdomen as a part of embalming process practiced in olden days. There are two kinds of markets or bazaars in the leading cities like Puhar and Madurai. In Madurai, there were Nalangadi, the morning bazaar, and Allangadi, the evening bazaar. In these markets, large varieties as well as large quantities of goods were sold and purchased. Major ports Musiri, Tondi, and Kurkai. Main exports salt, pepper, pearls, ivory, silk, spices, diamonds, saffron, precious stones, muslin, sandalwood. Main imports topaz, tin, wine, glass, horses. Silk supplied by Indian merchants to the Roman Empire was considered so important that the Roman Emperor Aurelian declared it to be the worth of its weight in gold. Muziris, the first emporium. The Roman writer Pliny the Elder writes of the Muziris in his Natural History as the first emporium, that is, shopping complex of India. A temple of Augustus was built at Muziris, which had a Roman colony. The papyrus document that is now in Vienna Museum of 2nd century BC records the agreement between the two merchants, that is, shippers of Alexandria and Muziris. Trade contact with overseas countries. Archaeological excavations have confirmed the trading relations between the Tamilagam and the countries such as Greece, Rome, Egypt, China, Southeast Asia, and Sri Lanka. Next, Calabaras. Towards the end of the 3rd century AD, the Sangam period slowly went into a decline. Following the Sangam period, the Calabaras had occupied the Tamil country for about 2.5 centuries. We have very little information about Calabaras. They left neither artifacts nor monuments, but there is evidence of their rule in literary texts. The literary sources for this period include Tamil Nalavar Charitai, Yapperunkalam, and Periya Puranam. Sivaka Sindamani and Kundalakesi were also written during this period. In Tamilaham, Jainism and Buddhism become prominent during this period. Introduction of Sanskrit and Prakrit languages had resulted into the development of a new script called Vatteluthu. Many works under the Padinen Keelkanakku were composed. Trade and commerce continued to flourish during this period. So the Kalabara period is not a dark age as it is portrayed. Thank you.